Nearly 2 weeks into the Iranian uprising, we're finally starting to hear some noise from the rest of the media, although the information trickling through still seems to be lacking. American human rights groups have verified up to 500 killings of protesters, but people on the ground are telling me that there are many, many more. I'm joined now by Younes Sadaghiani, who has contacts on the ground saying that there could be up to 5,000 people who've been killed by the regime. He says that his friend told him that bodies were left piled in the streets like sausages. So, Younes, thank you so much for joining me. If you could just give us a little bit of an update of where the protests stand today. We've heard of the official figures that are coming out of UN human rights organisations in the US are saying that about 500 protesters have been killed, but many people on the ground think that it's much higher than that.
Yeah, so basically there's an internet blackout in Iran, so we can't get the information out. But I have some distant families that have managed to, access Starlink or, somehow get access to the internet through VPN, which is actually very expensive in Iran. And a lady called me this morning, and basically her mother was telling her, because her mother lives in Iran, and her mother was telling her they probably must have killed more than 5,000 people. There's literally on her street, and she lives in a very kind of a lavish area. On her street, there is people, bodies lying on the floor, like sausages, is how she described it. And then the loved ones of the people have to come and identify to see if their son or their daughter or their father or their uncle is dead. So it's horrifying. And I actually really want to encourage the international community to do something. Because, look, if the Islamic Republic continues in the way he's killing, the protests will die down. Because at the end of the day, look, people have so much bravery in them and so much, stamina. They've been going on for 2 weeks now, almost every single day, especially for the last 4 or 5 nights. But the regime has got really scared to the point they're just massacring everyone and anyone they can get their hands on. So the international community needs to act now. I want to encourage the international community, the Israeli government, the US government, even hopefully the British government to do something about this.
Well, it looked at the start as if the regime was going to try and make some kind of concessions. They were offering people £5 a month as if that was going to do anything to try and assuage their problems with the cost of living. The BBC was originally saying this was only about the cost of living, and now we're realising that actually it's much more about the regime. And I just wondered, has the regime kind of changed its tack? It seems more now that it just wants to put these protests down. It's threatening war with Trump.
Look, we call the Islamic Republic the paper tiger. So they always make threats, but fundamentally, they can only use their strength to oppress and kill their own people. When it came to it during the 12-day war, they got a big slap by Israel and America. So I think that exposed them to the international community of how weak and pathetic they actually are. So let them threaten. Look, the thing is, if Khamenei doesn't back down, I don't think Trump will back down. And so far, Trump has been a man of his word, okay? He hasn't made threats that he hasn't materialized. So if Trump says we're locked and loaded, we're coming, he probably is. I don't think he will actually back down at this point. It's going to be a very bad image for him if he does. So let's see what happens. But then again, the time is now. It's not going to be good in 1 or 2 weeks' time because the protests would have probably died down back then. And if you strike then the people, I don't know. The time is now, honestly. I think within the next 48 hours, 24 hours, today, tomorrow, it needs to happen this week.
And you mentioned that you have some contacts within Iran. Could you tell me a little bit of a picture of sort of what's going on there? So the friend that you've spoken to, is it a case that everyone they know is out on the streets? Is it a case that there's, some people that they know saying, stay home, you shouldn't be doing this? What's the kind of split among the population there that they've spoke to you about?
Look, I have distant families in Iran. So luckily, all my close families outside of Iran, living in the UK, all around the world, but they're out. So I have distant families. So cousins, second aunties, second uncles, that kind of family. One of my second cousins actually messaged me on WhatsApp saying I got access to Starlink. But then Starlink is not very powerful. It's quite weak, actually. It's very slow. So because the regime is using everything in their power to jam the signals. And also, let's not forget, in order to access Starlink, I think you need a piece of hardware. It's like a piece of satellite. And we don't really have that hardware. So the people that are lucky enough to get their hands on it, even those people, their signals are being jammed. So in these kind of situations, it's very hard to know. Again, as I said, a girl called me this morning and she was relaying some message from what her mother said. When the Islamic Republic shuts down the internet, That's when they do their dirty work. So yesterday I heard 2,000. This morning I'm hearing 5,000. So it's only a matter of time. Look, the videos will eventually come out and we will see. But I think the Islamic Republic has realized that if they don't do something about this, they will collapse, because the people were just getting the job done from within, because the protests were massive and they were all around the country. You know, it wasn't just in Tehran or Mashhad, it was all around, from the north to the south to the east to the west. So this is the moment to act now. Again, I want to reiterate this message to the international community. This is the moment to act, because they started massacring their own people. And if we don't act, the protest will die down and the moment will be gone.
Would you call what's happening a revolution?
100%. 100%.
So Iran, especially the last sort of 100, 150 years, has had quite a tumultuous history. It's been marked by coups, by revolutions. Would you agree that most of the protesters, from what we're hearing, is that they want a return of the Shah?
Yes, they do. Look, he's the most popular figure at this point, and I support him as well. But even he said it. He wants to lead the transitional government. So we need like a transitional government to make sure we have a smooth transition. And then maybe in 1 or 2 or 3 years' time, we can decide what kind of a government we want, whether we want a monarchy, whether we want a republic, but that's down the road. At this moment in time, Shahzada Reza Pahlavi is a unifying figure that everyone needs to unite around. And we need to put our differences to one side and just support him until he gets into power.
The reason I ask is because when you say that everyone needs to unite around them, that makes sense. I mean, if you want to lead a revolution, it makes sense to come together. But we've already seen, we've had someone on GB News over the weekend who completely rejects this. She says that there is no one calling for the return of the Shah.
Look, this is the thing.
I'm not saying that I agree with that. What I'm saying, I'm giving you the opportunity to say, you know, that you disagree with that.
No. Look, I think majority of Iranians are on the side of the Shah, even if they're not monarchist. They just want to get rid of the Islamic Republic. And at this moment in time, the number one person that we have in the opposition is Shahzada Reza Pahlavi. Why is he number one? It's because he's the son of the previous king, Mohammad Reza Shah, and also the grandson of Reza Shah the first. So, you know, he's almost like the crown prince. And that's because everybody knows him. They knew his family, they knew his father, they knew his grandfather, they know what he stands for. But I think that Shahzada Reza Pahlavi had said himself that he wants to just help Iranian people. He is not really looking for power himself. And he said he's willing to help Iranian people to make that transition. Okay? So, look, in Iran, unfortunately, there is a lot of different groups. You know, we have the MEK, which is the Mujahideen. And if people don't know who the Mujahideen is, Mujahideen was the group that actually collaborated with the Islamic Republic to cause the revolution. They are like communist, Marxist, Islamists, right? And then when the Islamic Republic backstabbed them and kind of like outcasted them from the revolution, they actually collaborated with Iraq in the Iran-Iraq war. So they collaborated with Saddam Hussein to attack Iran. So Iranians as a whole do not like the MEK, do not like the Mujahideen. Okay, so that puts them out of the conversation. Then we have other factions that are maybe pro-Islamic Republic. Also, they are in the minority, right? So, which leaves us with Shahzada Reza Pahlavi. Okay, so I think he could be the unifying figure. But then again, look, it could be true. It could be true. Maybe some people in Iran don't like him. Maybe they do. But at this moment in time, we don't have anyone better. Unless someone else decides to stand up and lead the revolution. But it's very time sensitive. So if a new face emerges, it's going to be very time sensitive. And like by the time people get to know this person, I don't know if it will work, you know? So I think at this moment in time, we should all support Shahzada Reza Pahlavi, honestly. And then maybe we can decide in the next 1 or 2 years. But I have to say this. I think this is Shahzada Reza Pahlavi's last chance. I really do. Because, you know, we had like with Mahsa Amini, and we also had like last year, 2 years ago. He's had a few opportunities now to cause a revolution. And I know his hands are tied. And I know, you know, he needs international support. And, you know, he probably doesn't have the funding that he needs. Well, but Trump then again, you know...
Trump is refusing to talk to him. Why do you think that is? Do you think he has someone else in mind?
This is the thing. Look, this is the thing. I think that maybe within American or Israeli circles, they do not quite respect him, or maybe they think he's not really a leader. I personally don't think that, because I think at this moment in time, he's the best option we have. But from what I heard, because look, I travel all around the world. I've been to Israel 3 times. I've been to the United Nations. I've been to America. I've used to work for the Reform Party with Nigel Farage. And the opinion that is behind the scenes, all these officials, all these top government officials think of Pahlavi is that he's quite passive. You know, like we need more of like a wartime leader, and he comes across as a peacetime leader. That being said, I still think he's the best option that we have at this moment in time, and we should rally around him. And you know, it's up to the Iranian people anyway. Yeah, it's up to the Iranian people. You know, if Iranian people want him, if they're screaming his name, then it's not really up to the Americans or the Israelis to decide for us who to bring in. But I do agree with you. There's a big conversation to be had about that.
It definitely would make sense to have a monarchy because Iran has pretty much always been a monarchy. So there's that legitimacy there. And as you say, the crowds are calling for him. But what I'm trying to understand, in more just a historical conversation, just for our viewers who are really interested in Iran and what's going on there, is the cleavages, is the different groups and what they want. And a lot of the people who are anti the regime are also saying that this is a revolt against Islam. And we've seen that mosques are being burned in Iran, and I just wondered, how many people in Iran are actually very religious? Because clearly the regime did have a constituency of people that wanted it, and I just wonder, how does that break down in the population?
So basically, look, during the 1970s, 47 years ago, people were very religious, I would say, but because at the time they weren't as educated, there was no internet, and also they were brainwashed to some extent. But then I think after 47 years of oppression, after 47 years of Islamic extremism in Iran, people are just sick and tired. So it's funny because the Islamic Republic tried to force Islam on people, and that led to the Renaissance and the Age of Enlightenment that we see in Iran now, because people naturally rejected it. So it's funny, like when you try to force things on people, they actually they repel. And I think we've had this rebel spirit in Iran against Islam for many, many years now. So I think there was recently a survey done, I think it was last year, that more than 2/3 of Iranians do not identify with Muslim. And apparently we have a very fast growing Christian population. More than 1 million Iranians apparently converted to Christianity. Also, let's not forget that Iran or Persians were not even Muslims to begin with. There was Zoroastrian. Islam was something that was imposed on us 1,400 years ago. And I think the Islamic Republic was the second coming of that. But I think Persian culture is supreme in the sense that, we were conquered many times. We were conquered by Arabs and Islam. We were conquered by Genghis Khan. But eventually we came through out of it, and they couldn't destroy our culture. So I don't think Islamic Republic is any different.
Could you talk a little bit more about the Islamic conquest of Iran? Because it does almost seem that there's always been this tension in Iran between the people that want Islam and don't want it. And I just wonder if that's where the roots are. Yes,
maybe it is. Look, maybe it is. Because look, 1,400 years ago, we were conquered by Arabs that basically tried to convert everyone by the sword. So they gave us an option. You either convert, or we're going to behead you, or we're going to charge you jizya. And it took them 300 years to supposedly convert us to Islam. And then it also took another 300 years for us to get rid of them, right? So it's interesting, but I think in those 300 years, they almost spread their poison, and the ideology is kind of mixed. So I'm not going to say, Iran is not at all Muslim, because I would say maybe about 20% of Iranians are, but they're not even radicals. I don't think Iranians in general, there might be like a hard wing of it, but in speaking in terms of generalities, even the religious individuals are not fanatics. So to some extent is a revolt against Islam, to another extent is a revolt against the Islamic Republic, but let's not also forget, it's an economic revolt. People are starving. Iran is one of the richest countries in the world. We don't have enough water, we don't have enough gas, electricity. We should be like, in a normal circumstance, we should be in the top 5 GDPs in the world. So because we have a lot of oil, a lot of gas, we can do a lot of good things. Like look at Saudi Arabia, and I think actually Persia is richer than, and we have better weather. We're not a desert. We have mountains, we have beaches, we have all kinds of different things. And we also have a culture that's much older. So people see that. People look around and they look at Dubai across the Persian Gulf. They look at Saudi. And they see the Islamic Republic sending their money to Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis, giving them salaries, sending them weaponry, selling them rockets. for free, and people are starving, and people are like, what the hell, you know? And you know, the Islamic Republic is not even Iranian. Even Khamenei has said this. Khamenei sees himself as the head of the Shia militias, or also like a figurehead in Islam. So he doesn't care about Iran. It's the Islamic Republic. So who do they care about? The proxies, Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah, even ISIS, even Taliban, you know, even some of the extremists in Pakistan. They sent money to all these groups. So they don't even care about Iran. Khamenei even came out and said a few years ago, we need to get rid of the Iranian roots in this country. Can you imagine that? So this is the thing. These people are not even Iranians. That's what I always say. They're not even Iranians. It's like, imagine if Hamas took over Israel, or imagine if the Muslim Brotherhood took over UK. You know, that's the circumstance Iran is in right now.
Not too hard to imagine the last one.
Yeah.
Are we seeing any signs of weakness within the regime? There's been video footage that hasn't really been verified of Ayatollahs taking their families out of the country. Obviously, there's reported plans that the Ayatollah himself wants to flee to Moscow if it gets too bad.
Look, there is unverified reports. I personally think that Khamenei is delusional. And I personally think he probably won't leave. Not right now anyway. I think he's trying to kill his own people, make threats to Israel in a hope that they back down. But I don't think Israel and America will back down, because I heard a story yesterday that apparently they might preemptively attack Israel with their most powerful ballistic missiles. And that is a big threat, because if they do that, they could possibly wipe off Israel off the face of the earth. But then again, you know, Israel has this laser dome now, this new technology, and they also have the previous Iron Dome. But you just need to be quick. You know, I think in the last 2 weeks, Israel and America have wasted some time. You know, the moment is now. The moment is now. I want to reiterate this message. The moment is now. And if we let this go on, the Islamic Republic will eventually kill many, many civilians. The protest will die down. Then if Israel strikes then, or America strikes then it's going to be a war between, and then people are going to get scared because they don't want to get bombed. So I think that's what it is. But if Khamenei sees that his regime is falling, if he sees Israel, America striking him, you know, this is what I'm saying. America needs to go for Khamenei, or Israel needs to go for Khamenei. I don't even know why they haven't already, or why they didn't go for it for a 12-day war. I understand it to some extent, but they need to go after him and his son.
Do you think that it caught the international community off guard, these protests? Because it is strange. I mean, normally maybe you'll get left-wing media ignore something, or you'll get right-wing media ignore something. But across the board, these protests were ignored for a long time. And one of the defences that you hear is that it's hard to verify stuff coming out of Iran. It's hard to verify stuff coming out of everywhere. Very hard to verify information coming out of Gaza, but that didn't stop them.
Exactly, and they are biased because, you know, the real apartheid is happening in Iran. The real occupation is happening in Iran. We had a bunch of Islamic extremists coming, and now the people themselves, it's not an external force, the people themselves are protesting against their overlords, and the international community is silent. Whereas for Hamas and Israel, they cause October 7th, so they go and attack Israel. And then on October the 8th, we have protests against Israel. Like, how does that even make sense? So I think and also this is much deeper than that, because, you know, a lot of the indoctrination and the influence being bought by Qatar actually traces back to the Islamic Republic, because they share a gas field. And because the Islamic Republic is under sanctions, the Qatar takes all the money and then they give a check every year to the Islamic Republic. And they also have a lot of their officials in Qatar. Hamas is still living in Qatar. Hezbollah is living in Qatar. They actually have confirmed offices there.
It just makes some of you who maybe are more conspiratorially minded wonder if there is an interest in actually the regime continuing.
Yeah, there is. No, look, 100%. There is an interest definitely by Qatar. There's an interest by Russia. There's an interest by China. Why? Because China is buying oil from Iran for almost free, like dead cheap, like 30% of this actual value.
But
Russia.
Sorry, you carry on.
Yeah, sorry. Russia has the biggest gas field in the world, but then Iran is second. So if Iran comes into the market, that will take the gas monopoly away from Russia. So Putin wants to keep them in power because they're on the sanction. They can't sell their gas. So he takes all the money, you know? So I would say Russia doesn't want them gone. China doesn't want them gone. Qatar doesn't want them gone. You know, the Labour left-leaning government in this country, Keir Starmer, probably doesn't want him gone. Macron probably doesn't want him gone. It's the left. It's always the unholy marriage of left-wingism, Marxism, and Islamism.
And if we do bring it back to this country, we've seen a lot of, there's a lot of Iranian diaspora in this country, yourself included. They're very active, very vocal. I have a lot of respect for them. So do our GB News viewers. We've seen them protesting at the weekend. They replaced the flag on the Iranian embassy. But there was also some skirmishes outside the Islamic Centre of England, which is in Maida Vale. And there are supposed reported ties between that place and the Iranian regime. Could you talk about sort of why that would be happening on the streets in London?
Well, because the Islamic Center is infiltrated by the Islamic Republic. Anyone that is affiliated with the Islamic Republic, or anyone that has any kind of sympathy with the Islamic Republic, you probably see them around the Islamic Center. So I think Iranians know that, and these fights outside are basically almost like a fight between the revolutionaries and the Islamic Republic, and it's playing it out in the streets of London. And it's not the first time it's happened. It's happened a few times already.
We in Europe, in a way, are letting our free speech laws kind of be abused by some of these nefarious groups to sow chaos in the Middle East. And it almost, if you think back to when Khamenei took over Iran, if France had not allowed him to be there and plan his revolution, maybe none of this would have ever happened.
Yeah.
But we don't learn.
The thing is, back in 1979, the British government, the BBC, and President Carter, which was a Democrat and a left-winger, were either jealous or basically they had other interests that the Shah didn't have. Because the Shah was the police officer of the Middle East. There was no significant wars in the Middle East up until 1979 because the Shah used to control everything. He used to keep Saddam Hussein in check. He used to even keep Afghanistan in check. He used to keep the whole region in check. So the Shah, what he done, he basically managed to nationalize the oil and he created OPEC, which meant the countries that have oil can set the price and they can sell it. And for a long time, British Petroleum used to own Iranian oil. For a long time, British Petroleum. So when the Shah took control of his own natural resources, or that his country produced, which is the right of him and the Iranian people, the British and the Americans didn't like that because he was almost like a pawn they couldn't control anymore. So I think what happened to Iran could happen in the West. Don't think it can't happen to you. And that's why us Iranians always try to tell the world, don't think you're beyond those things because it's already happening. So they managed to overthrow a Shah with a lie. You know, they even killed people inside Iran and then blamed the Shah for it. You know? Yeah, they set the cinema on fire. I don't know if you know about this Cinema Rex, that they locked everyone inside the cinema and they burnt the whole cinema down. Like 150, 200 people died and they blamed it on the Shah. You know, people at the time, there was no internet, so the mainstream media had control and monopoly over everything. So these are the things that happened. They done a job on us. And look what happened. They done a job on us. Now it's affecting them.
The Shah gave a really interesting interview to 60 Minutes in the 70s, and the interviewer put it to him that the CIA called him a megalomaniac who probably doesn't have America's best interests at heart. And then not too long after was the revolution.
Look, he had a great relationship with President Nixon. He also had a great relationship with Kennedy. I think Carter was just a terrible, terrible president. He was a bit like Biden. If you look at what happened during Carter, in America even, there was an energy crisis, there was rampant inflation. The whole thing was a mess. And some of it traced back to the Shah, because of what's happening to the Shah. But look at Biden. Look, let's just compare the presidency of Biden and President Trump. As I said, it's usually the left-wingers and the Marxist types that cause this. And then because they think, we're being empathetic. Let's give power to these mullahs. Let's overthrow the Shah. But I think, look, there was a bit of influence from the deep state. And at the end of the day, look, Every country should have their own best self-interest at heart. That's the right of your country, England first, America first, Iran first, if you live in that country. That should be the mentality every single country has. And if we have a natural resource, then we decide at what price to sell it. And the thing is, we created OPEC, which wasn't just us. America and Britain were asking us, yo, you need to sell oil to us at a cheaper rate. And then the Shah was like, why? Why should I set one price for you and one price for everyone else? It doesn't make sense.
Well, thank you so much for that. We're going to keep an eye on the protests as they continue. And obviously, you're welcome back on as and when events change. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Nick.